Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines, and in this video we are going to be undertaking a review of one of the very recent releases from jcwings, one of their trio of all Nippon Airbus A380-800s. As you can see, I've got all three of the models here, but it is the one in the centre which we will be doing the review for this time round. And first up, I want to say a big thank you to jcwings for sending me through these three models so I could take a closer look at them. I really appreciate it when manufacturers want to send me models for review. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll get a good review, but generally I don't accept models from companies that I don't appreciate the quality of products from, and jcwings have shown a real improvement over the last 3 or 4 years with a great variety of new and very good molds and some really impressive printing detail as well. So a big thank you to jcwings for sending me these models. This one is going to be looking at the model in the center here, the orange version of the flying Honu colors, and so that will be the model which will be the focus. Now, before we start the review, as always, if you like yesterday's Airlines reviews and you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. Check out my website, yesterdaysairlines.com, which is full of news all about 400 scale. Also, follow me on Instagram and Facebook at yesterairlines because I post regularly on those channels too. Great. Okay, now, before we get started the review, last thing to say is, as always, the format of the review. This doesn't change. It's split into 3 areas. Firstly, we check out the mold itself, give that a score out of 10. Then we look at the livery and the colors, and we give those a score out of 10. And lastly, we look at the printing and the quality control of the release, and we give that a score out of 10. So you can get a maximum score of 30 for one of these reviews. Okay, so let's switch over and start checking out this model in detail. Okay, so here we have the aircraft JA383A in the orange version of the flying Honu colors. I believe it's named Kala or Hawaiian Sunset. And actually this frame hasn't technically entered service with All Nippon. I believe it's been delivered, but it hasn't actually ever gone to Japan. It's been stored at Toulouse. And they will put it into service probably this year at some point. Obviously, COVID has delayed the implementation and usage of these A380s aircraft, which All Nippon probably doesn't even want. They only acquired them as part of the deal to take over the remains of Skymark Airlines, and that was reasonably contentious. However, All Nippon have painted all 3 up in these lovely variants of the turtle colours, the flying Honu, and the aircraft are, or at least the other 2 aircraft are used exclusively flying between Tokyo and Honolulu. And this aircraft is likely to join them, as I say, this year sometime. Now, Airbus A380s in general are not a cornerstone of my collection by any means. Of the 2,000... I can't remember how many models I've got now, 2,500 or something like that. Of that many models, I think I only own 3 or 4 A380s. And that's because they just don't fit my collecting criteria. I've got a China Southern one because I collect Chinese airlines. I've got an Airbus House Colours model because I collect house colours. And I think I've got a Singapore one as well for no particularly good reason. But I don't really have many others. Having said that, it is commonly known from a mold perspective that the jcwings Gemini mold, which is quite an old mold, dates from around 2006 originally, is inferior to the Phoenix mold. And I'm not going to say that that's not the case just because jcwings sent this model. It clearly is the case. However, the inferiority is not enormous in my opinion. Now, the area which generally people believe is inferior is at the nose. So let's just take a quick look at a real A380 nose cone, and so we can see how that looks. Okay, so that's the A380 nose cone in 1-to-1. Now, if we take a look at this aircraft and bring it closer to the screen here, and I get the camera to focus, then you can see that the shape of the nose cone is pretty good, but it is not perfect. The primary areas of contention are the roundness, especially of this upper part here, and the angle coming here from the cockpit deck up to the top of the fuselage roof there. And they are not quite correct. The nose cone is not round enough, especially at the top margin, and the angle here is not exactly as it ought to be. Having said that, it's not, you know, a million miles away either, and it's not been something which dramatically bothers me, but I know that other people do have an issue with this, so it is worth pointing it out that this is not the best nose available in 400 scale for an A380. Having said that, the rest of the mold is pretty nice. Now, another thing about these this mold is how heavy it is. It is a weighty mold because it is a zinc mold, and unlike the Phoenix A380, which is a much lighter because I believe it's hollow aluminium, and that has led to, with the Phoenix mold, sometimes an issue where it doesn't want to sit flat and the nose gear sits up in the air. That's also not an issue with this one because this one's a rock solid, really heavy mold. So I don't know if it really matters whether it's made of zinc or aluminium. Probably doesn't, but it's worth bearing in mind this is a lot heavier. It certainly sits very nicely on the landing gear because of that. So that is maybe something to bear in mind. Now, the rest of the mold, if you move across, is actually really, really nice. It's been updated gradually over the years, so it's got a good set of aerials on it. And one of the things about the aerials which is particularly nice is that they are sized really well, unlike on some other jcwings molds where they tend to be a little bit large. And they've also added, just in recent years, this very, very small one, which you can see here just before the tail, which is a nice addition. So this one has got 4 aerials, 3 on the rooftop and 1 underneath on the forward belly there, and it's got the 2 domes on the fuselage roofline as well, and they all look really, really nice. Now, additionally, the wings are really, really well represented, and I quite like, you know, the wing fences here are very good too. The engines are actually really, really attractive from the side. But one thing about the engines to bear in mind is because this is quite an old mold, they are solid core fans. That doesn't bother me. Quite often the detail on solid cores is better than on the newer see-through fan blades where they're having to make compromises to enable you to get that see-through visibility. So it doesn't bother me dramatically, but I know that the most modern 400 scale molds tend to have see-through fans. The join of the wing to the fuselage here is excellent, and the general shape of the fuselage, especially the tail cone area here, is really, really nice. And at the back, the mold really shines. It's got this beautiful, huge vertical fin and good horizontal stabilizers, really nicely shaped, sharp at the edges, really, really good. Now, moving across to the bottom of the mold, and you can see that there's some really good sculpting in detail here for these intakes and also for the main gear undercarriage doors. And it actually looks really, really impressive. So in many ways, this is a really, really nice mold with some really, really nice detailing. Another nice element here for the mold is that the undercarriage all moves on separate bogies, which is a nice feature, gives it a little bit more realism. So again, that is really nice. Now, if we look at the model from the front, again, it looks good, but I do think that the curve of the wing here could be stronger, and I do think that maybe the winglets are a little bit high, so perhaps that is a minor issue, not one that tends to stick out on the mold, I have to say. So actually, you know, overall, I think this is a really good mold, but not a perfect mold. It certainly fits the bill enough for me when I'm buying A380s, and of the A380s I own, which I don't have many, I've got one Phoenix, and I think the other 2 are this JCWings Gemini mold. It'll certainly be interesting to see how the Aviation 400 A380, which is upcoming in the new year probably, competes with this. I think it'll do very well, and it may cause jcwings to think about this mold a bit more and maybe make some changes. I don't know, but in the meantime, the mold itself is solid, very solid. In fact, it's a reliable mold. It's not a spectacularly great one, but it's not bad by any margin. I think if I'm going to score this mold, then I'm going to be giving this probably a 7 out of 10. So I'll knock a point off certainly for the nose shape, and probably another for the solid core engines and another for the angle of the wings. But it certainly looks like an A380 and represents the type well. I don't have major issues acquiring this, but like I say, I just don't buy many A380s anyway. So 7 out of 10 for the mold. But to be fair, the reason you're probably buying this model is for the livery, so it's the next section which is probably more important. Okay, now I've brought the model up onto the stand. The stand doesn't come with a stand, it's just one I've got. So we can get a better look at the livery. This is obviously an incredibly complicated livery. Now, one of the things with previous releases of this scheme has been that both the original jcwings and the Phoenix versions of these three all Nippon A380s were produced before the aircraft actually existed. And that means that they're all inaccurate to varying degrees. Now, one of the things which was not known about the later versions of the scheme is that the turtles would be modified slightly, and so certainly the Phoenix versions have completely incorrect eyes on them. As you can see, this third all Nippon A380 has a female turtle, or at least looks kind of female, and so you've got these long eyelashes, and their release just doesn't have those at all, so it's completely incorrect. And in many other details, the schemes were also not correct as well. So it's interesting when we look at this model, not only do we need to compare it to the real aircraft, but also we need to compare it to the previous releases as well. So let's start with the colours. Actually, the light in the room here is making the colours look a bit more washed out than they do in person. I actually think the colours on this model are good. There are 3 different shades of orange at least, actually probably 4 different shades of orange, thinking about it, and they all look pretty good to me. Certainly the aircraft has a really nice colour, and I'm actually surprised by how much I like these releases because they're way outside my criteria, but they're really attractive. Now, in terms of the detail of the livery, as you can see, this model is full of detail. You've got 3 different turtles, you've got loads of other pieces, and there is some really cracking renditions of the turtles here, especially on the rear fuselage. They look excellent. The colours are grand. The positioning of the livery components is pretty much perfect as far as I can see, and they look really, really good. Again, also at the rear, the all Nippon logo and the ANA Inspiration of Japan element there, beautifully shaped, positioned, colours are all correct, no problems at all. And while I'm here, if we look over on the wing, you can see that it's got the Rego sitting here on the wing top. Now, the original Phoenix version had it way off over here somewhere, which was completely incorrect yet again. It is, however, the front of the aircraft which has caused the most contention in terms of the original models. And if we move it across, obviously I've already mentioned the eye, which is excellent in this case on this model, really nicely done. But you've got this very complex area here, and you've also got the beginning of the flipper of this big turtle here. Now, on the original models, this was completely incorrect. Did not have the right shape or lines. Here it is looking really, really good. And the shape of all of these scales and the shell is also excellent. What is less impressive on this model, and the only real mistake that I can see with the livery, is the area just above the eye. So this area here, the scale shape on there is not quite correct. Just this scale and that one, where they join. The scale directly above the eye should be larger. and it should fit more tightly with the scale above it. So that is a minor issue, not one that really detracts from the look of the model, but ironically one that was actually correct on the original version of the jcwings of this model, and for some reason is not now. So that's a little unusual. Having said that, all the other things that were missing from the earlier releases have been added and are now correct. So we've got the Star Alliance logo, we've got these Airbus A380 titles, we've got white and grey door outlines here, we've got really good colour and positioning of everything except that area there. So in general, this is a major upgrade on the previous release by jcwings and Phoenix, and it really is a very attractive model. Now we've already taken a bit of a look at the underside, but we'll just take another look seeing as we're in the livery section. And you can see that on the underside here, we've got really large belly titles, which look really, really good. So no problems there either, looking excellent from that perspective. So overall, aside from that one issue with the eye area on this model, then I think the livery is looking very, very impressive. It's certainly a very complicated scheme and one that's hard to reproduce in 400 scale, and I think that JC have done a good job, but just not quite perfect. So in this area, I'm minded to give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, on to the last part of the scoring, and that is for the printing and the build quality. Now, I'm a massive fan of the print quality that JCWings brings to the field. In my opinion, their printing is as good as the printing done by ngmodels, Panda, Aviation 400, geminijets, and significantly better than Phoenix, whose printing generally is relatively lackluster in terms of both the quality and the amount. And you can see on this model that if we look across it, it's chock full of real quality print detail. Now, I always say in my reviews that if you want to judge print quality, one of the areas to look at is engines, and just look at all the panel line detailing on these engines, whereas the Phoenix releases had none. So that is superb. Now, if we move across again and look at the front of the model, this again was an area where the original Phoenix release was heavily criticised. Not only did they not do some of the things we talked about with the livery, but at the same time they missed off some other very small but significant points. They got the number of windows incorrect here and up here. They also missed off some small points like just that line just at the bottom corner of the door, which is a marker for the air bridges to join. So there's real detail in crispness on what's been done here, and you can see that the nose cone has some really nice printing. And again, if you switch over to the belly, there's a load of belly printing here. Now, this mold already has quite a lot of markings that are, like I said earlier on, part of the mold itself for gear doors and these intakes, but there's loads of other printing detail here, which is really classy and really, really nicely done. So I can't fault the printing detail on JCWings models. They always have great printing and look superb, which is one of the reasons why I am a reasonably big supporter of especially their wide bodies. Now, their narrow bodies tend to be on weaker molds, but their wide bodies tend to be really quite impressive, and the print really stands out on models like this one, where you've got a lot of really good detail. Now, obviously been waving this model around during this review, and so there's obviously no printing issues, no build quality issues. It's all in one piece, everything rolls, I think. I don't run one model around, but I'm sure it rolls. And it's a really nicely put together model, so that's really nice. So the last thing just to bring up around this release is actually not about the model itself, but about the packaging it comes in. As is often the case with models which are made unlicensed. JC puts this in one of these vanilla orange boxes. It's perfectly fine. It's a box. It doesn't really bother me. But another nice detail they also add in for these orange box releases is the collector's card, which again is nice. I mean, they don't need to do this. It's plastic. It's like a little credit card, and it's got some nice detail on it. The only thing that would make this better is if it said the number of pieces, and you know, it's like 1 of 200 or something like that, which it doesn't. But other way, it's a really nice feature to add in to the model, and it makes, you know, just it seem a little bit classier to have. So that's nice. And overall, I think this has got an exemplary set of printing. I don't really see any issues. There's no build quality problems. This is getting a 10 out of 10 for me in that area. Okay, so time for the roundup. As I say, A380 is not a core focus for me, but I am surprised by how much I really like these models, which is a bit of a problem because it just means I'm going to buy more models. But nonetheless, it's an excellent looking release. The mold isn't the perfect A380, but it's a perfectly decent A380, even if it's not spectacular. I probably wouldn't bother replacing even if a better mold comes out. I really like the detailing of this model, and it's got some exceptionally good printing, which and the livery rendition is good as well. So I think this is a very nice model. The other two are equally attractive, and they certainly go very, very well together. I can highly recommend getting this, especially in comparison to the previous releases, which you should avoid, both the JCWings and the Phoenix, because they're both incorrect on various different features because they were made before the aircraft came into service. And you know, this is a really nice replacement for those models, and certainly will colour and you know, make your collection really pop, especially if you've got a model airport diorama. This one's going to look spectacular if I get this over onto my Xinglong diorama later on and take some photos of her. So yeah, I think these are lovely models. JCWings is a really reliable manufacturer when it comes to the models they actually put out. They're less reliable when it comes to putting them out in decent times, I know, but when you actually get the models, the wide bodies especially are invariably excellent. So overall, what was the score? It was a 7 for the mold, it was a 9 for the livery, and it was a 10 for the printing and the QC, which gives this A380 a combined score of 26 out of 30, which is putting it firmly in, you know, the top section of my scoring. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. As I say, I really love this model. I'm surprised by how much I like it, and I'm really glad that JC sent me it through. So thank you very much again, JCWings, and I hope you guys like the video. Check out my other channels as always, and there'll be more content along these lines coming in the coming weeks. Thanks very much for watching. See you later on.